Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm your host. I'm so glad you're back again. You know, if you're tuning in for the very first time, welcome to the podcast. Many of you have been following me for a long time. Many of you are my radio listeners for some of you over 4 decades. Thank you for still being here with us and utilizing this new platform. It's kind of nice to be able to see my guest and interact with them, because I've been doing the phone thing for such a long time, and this has been really, really great. So I hope you're enjoying it. Remember, you can go to my podcast and get there easily from my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com. Just tap on the Honest Health logo. It'll take you to Spotify, so you can listen to the audio whenever you like. You can also tap on the YouTube channel and actually watch the interview. So I think you're going to be really excited today. This is going to be a power-packed interview and a great show today. So please enjoy this. And if you want to tell some about it, make sure they go back and listen because it's going to be great information. My guest today is Bill Chioffi. He's an herbalist and has worked in the natural products community since 1994 in manufacturing, global sourcing, supply chain, education, quality analysis, research, and the sale of dietary supplements and ingredients. He has experience with the natural products retail, ingredient manufacturing, and food and beverage sectors. He's currently Chief Operating Officer for Nammex and has worked for Gaia Herbs, the Rick Scalzo Institute for Botanical Research at Sonoran University of Health Sciences, and as an independent business owner. In addition to his work with Nammex, Bill has been a long-standing member and serves on the board of directors for the United Plant Savers and is a representative of Nammex to the American Herbal Products Association Board of Directors, representative to the United Products Association, and a member of the Association of Official Analytical Chemists. Bill lives in Asheville, North Carolina with his family, spends as much time outdoors as possible, likes to fly fish, hike, garden, and mushroom forage around the mountains of North Carolina and beyond. Help me welcome my guest. Hey, Bill.
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Burke? Good to see you today.
It's wonderful to have you. A real honor for me to have you on the show. And, your bio says so much about your experience. And, both of us have been around for a long time. And it's always nice to be able to have people that have seen where we were, where we are, and maybe have insight to where we're going.
Yeah, thanks. It's a long, I attribute the longevity to the good health and herbs along the way and mushrooms. So yeah, I'm happy to be on, and you had sent a couple of questions in advance, and I did think about where we're at. We are passing some historical marks with things like Deshay having 30th anniversary, and some discussions in the industry now about product listings that are being discussed and opposed, and favored by some, opposed by many. There are a lot of changes, and even over the last couple of years, and the changes that the pandemic brought have altered health consciousness to some degree. So.
Well, a lot of changes, and I think, I almost think about it as almost primitive time when we first started because there was like little to no selection. Actually, somebody asked me the other day, how was radio back then? And I said, well, they used to drop a needle on a record and that was my break. And then we went to 8-tracks, and then we went to cassettes, and then we went to MP3s, and then discs, and now everything, of course, is wireless. So we've seen amazing transitions through a lot of things, and I love what the industry has to offer. I enjoy all the time seeing new things and new discoveries. And, I had a conversation with a guest the other day. We were talking about how sometimes in this country, we look at something as brand spanking new, and it's been used for 1,000 years in another part of the world. And here we are thinking it's brand new. So I think there's still a lot to learn.
Absolutely. And we certainly find that with traditional medicine all the time. A traditional food or a traditional medicine that was quite common, yet undiscovered for whatever reason. So, the world of mushrooms is like that, where we haven't scratched the surface of even discovering the number of viable uh, fungi that are out there. And that includes all the ones that you can see that produce mushrooms. The other ones that are fungi, that imperfect fungi like penicillin comes from, have contributed major amounts to human health along the way. So, certainly there's more discoveries out there, because the analytical technology to discover interesting things about these substances is advancing. So we have a clearer picture chemically of what these substances are in plants that make them so special, and mushrooms and foods even, excuse me. And that can help guide the research as to how it's getting through the human Pachenko machine in order to elicit its response in the body. And so what I'm most excited about is sort of a return back to health maintenance, and looking at wellness as maintaining wellness to be able to fend off certain types of illnesses, as opposed to applying a natural treatment when your immune system has succumbed. We need both, but for many years it was the hardest to get people to understand why herbs like astragalus or tonic herbs were important to use, because how do you know they're working? Well, I didn't get sick. So, I mean, for many of them, there isn't a tangible feeling unless you apply them differently than in a tonic dose. So, I think because of the pandemic and people wanting to maybe eat better, starting to listen to things about what types of foods to eat, how much exercise to get, it really adds to a whole different sector of the natural health market that has been hard to get people to understand how to use them. They're looking for relief, natural pain relief, natural cold and flu relief. And those are the types of things that have an immediate impact and benefit. And if you drink a green drink every day, you might feel great, but you might feel great because you're running too, and you started to meditate, and you are taking better care of yourself in general. So I think for me, that, along with the transparency that consumers are looking for and asking for in their products, right down to the beginning of the supply chain of where those things are coming from, that is now more apparent than ever in statistics, that that's very important in a decision as to which type of product to buy. And I think that benefits everybody, because those types of products that do have good custody from start to finish are typically more ecologically sound in their production. They're using materials for packaging that is not one use, or, single use most of the time. And so I think, yeah, like you said, that I'm really encouraged by by what's happening, and at the same time, we have more avenues to purchase things than ever. And I worry about the controls on all these avenues to purchase products, where I didn't worry about that when there was a health food store with a properly trained person inside of it, answering questions and doing research along with the customers often. So yeah, I think there's always two sides. I'm in, I look at the regulatory side of the business quite a bit, and spend quite a bit of time with our quality team. And so I have to be very um, detail oriented in that way. There are a lot of issues in the general marketplace, with the way that the again, the vast area where you can now buy supplements. And most of the recent issues really with natural products have been gas type products, things that you wouldn't find in a natural product store, and yet to the general consumer, I think they get lumped all together, that it was a natural product containing some substance and somebody got sick from it, or at worst, deceased from that product. So these things will continue to happen. They've been happening since we've been selling supplements, but again, if you look at the reports of just over-the-counter medications and how many people have deceased from using those, then you would have a different perspective on, yes, it's bad when that happens, period, right? But relative to pharmaceuticals, I think it's much less. So, yeah, and can't think of much else to say on that, really. But what about you? I mean, you've been in and around this, and you're a naturopath, and you've seen different seen your clients and people respond differently. What encourages you about the last couple of years change?
I think the open-mindedness, and I know just a few years, of course, I'm going to blame the pandemic, but also credit the pandemic with people opening their awareness, to things maybe out of fear, maybe out of desperation, but nonetheless opening up their mind to something that maybe they never ever ventured into. But I think the one thing that I've been finding that is a lot better for me is the cohesiveness of the combining of the medical establishment, because I work with a lot of doctors who years ago, many of them I've known for a long time, who never would have ever even had a conversation, are now writing handwritten prescriptions for ashwagandha or magnesium or vitamin D and things like that.
Mm.
And, funny story, when I was in Los Angeles way back in 1980, oh my Lord, that sounds like a long time ago. The doctors would come from UCLA. They would come to the health food store after hours to the back door to come in and get their vitamins because they didn't want their colleagues to see them in the front
Yeah,
of a health food store. So we've come a long way, but it's amazing how many doctors are now working, I wouldn't say hand in hand, but they have the awareness and realize the importance that, drugs are not the only things in the basket. We need to build the body as too, and drugs are not building anything,
yeah.
so I like that.
Yeah, no, I think I recall in when I was living in the Boston area, and there was a Whole Foods right at the Mass General Hospital, and the doctors would perform kind of grand rounds in the health food in the supplement department. And if you were a vendor who was trusted, you could answer questions about any of the products that were there if you were invited by Whole Foods to assist on that day. And so that was, gosh, that was probably 15 years ago. And so,
Nice.
I know like it is an increasing interest because of the demand from the public. They're asking their doctors questions, and the doctors really need to have answers beyond what's on their physician's desk reference that is limited, and then other resources like WebMD, which are okay, but they don't really often give the full picture.
True.
And so, yeah, no, but I'm very encouraged by that, and I think in general there's a lot more education that needs to be done continuously. I think we've both been in those types of positions for quite a long time, and
True.
you know, I know there is, because the longer I spend doing that type of work, the more I realize I need to learn about certain topics continuously to stay on top of current research and what's happening. So that will always be a need, and I'm glad that there's more ways to do that. Let's just be careful about when we start to see things that are blatantly AI generated
Yeah.
about plants, and uh, that's another thing maybe for a whole different show. But
Well, no, I agree 100%. And I catch myself every once in a while, because as we continue to learn, as much as we learn, we've probably forgotten a bunch of things. And sometimes I'll read an article and I'm like, I forgot about that, so there is that constant updating and, opening old files that we've tucked away and realizing that there's still really good, valid information at our fingertips. And to that point, today it seems like the consumer, they've gotten smarter. They're looking for, to your point again, transparency, but also they want answers to questions. Now, most people don't want to be overwhelmed with the technical things. I've learned a
Hmm.
long time ago that most of my friends that I've talked to, they want to know what something is, what is it meant to do, when should I take it, can I take it, and how much is it? So
Yeah,
those kind of things. So,
exactly.
but they know vitamins. They've learned amino acids, they've learned some botanicals. I think the category that is still throwing people for a loop is the functional mushroom category. And I do a lot of trainings on it, but it seems like I get that sometimes deer in the headlight look. And I think about other parts of the world where it's so common and
Yeah.
so everyday. That's a huge category for us.
Yeah, I know so. I'm in that business
Hmm.
now, working for Nammex for the last couple of years, and I've been following along and wondering when people would realize the health benefits beyond just a couple of different species. But we have to put it in perspective, right? So in the naturopathic community, I think there might be two mushrooms on the NPLEX exams for to have to know for your final exams. I think it's cordyceps and reishi, perhaps, but
I think those two. I'm pretty sure.
those two. And so back when working with naturopaths to teach them beyond the herbs that were required on the NPLEX, people who specialized in botanical medicine, of course, knew way more plants than what was required for that exam. But what I'm saying is, even with the most specialized of caregivers that are being trained professionally, they're only learning about a couple of different species and then a limited amount in quite detail, unless they, again, specialize in botanical medicine. So we put it in perspective there, and I think, yeah, there is some confusion, but on the other side, since these have been consumed for a couple thousand years as foods or nutritional teas, I think that we have a lot of safety on our side as well. So um, the the vast number of fungal species that haven't yet even been discovered is something to consider, where we're using maybe 12, 13 of 150,000 different species of mushrooms. So, and that have been identified. And so I think it's yeah, there is um, throwing people for a loop. I guess the things I think about the most are when we classify all functional mushrooms as adaptogens, I don't think we do them quite the service to the
Hmm.
category of adaptogens. And so there are other experts much more well versed on this topic than myself, like David Winston, for instance, an herbalist who many know. He probably would categorize cordyceps more closely as a truly an adaptogenic uh, type of a mushroom, and possibly Ganoderma. Although, when you start to expand the dosage for some mushrooms, there are some effects that are pronounced over others. And so, in order for something to be truly classified as an adaptogen, it has to be normalizing to all functions. It can't have, it can have an amphoteric effect where it normalizes something, but that some of the mushrooms, dose specific, would not be classified as adaptogens. So the general tonic nature of the mushrooms is true. They've been eaten as foods, 2 to 10 grams dried mushroom, uh, or their equivalent fresh if it's a white button or a shiitake. eat about 100 grams of mushrooms is fitting in the palm of your hands for fresh mushrooms, and then they're 90% water. So when you dry them down, you've got, 2 to 10 grams of dried material that was either brewed into a decoction, tea, mixed with other herbs, and made a traditional medicine, or consumed in some way. And so we have a lot of good data that goes back throughout different, like the Shennong, the Divine Farmer's Almanac, classic text on traditional Chinese medicine that mentions the Ganoderma species and Ganoderma lingzhi, or reishi mushroom. And so, but beyond that, there actually aren't that many species even mentioned in TCM, but they were consumed, they were eaten by people. So, um, yeah, I think that's what I have come to realize, is that there is a huge educational gap, with folks, and I think it's more pronounced in the West for sure, because we have been fungi phobic here,
Oh, that's so true. It's so
and
true.
unless you have a tradition of it in your family from Eastern Europe or European or someplace else, or Asian culture, then you didn't incorporate mushrooms into your daily foods, your traditional foods. My grandmother was Polish, and I have
Mine
an
too.
Italian grandfather, so we had mushrooms on both sides. But I think my Polish grandmother, I remember actually going out and collecting, like not going out willingly, like probably being dragged with her and her her friends to go mushroom picking,
Mm-hmm.
in the spring and in the fall. And those mushrooms would get dried down and put in kapusta, in cabbage, with for dinner or soup or whatever we were going to have. But yeah, at the time, I never thought like, oh, I really want to know what these mushrooms are. And I was a young kid. I was just kind of like being tagged along. But
You're
over
being
time,
punished.
yeah. But later on in life, and going back and talking to my uncle, who probably actually he's one of the last people in the family that knew where exactly those mushrooms were being um, gathered from. But I kind of know what they were. They were pine. There were a lot of them were boletes, and they were in kind of pine areas. And But anyway, no, that's just interesting how these things happen to us in our lives, and at the time they don't really, you don't understand the significance of it. But then much later you'll see like, oh yeah, there was a reason why you had to sit there and watch your grandmother pick those mushrooms, and then I did learn which ones were edible. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people start getting into it, and it does quite take a little bit of more discrimination to tell some mushrooms than it does certain types of medicinal plants. If I will say that, both can be difficult and both can be tricky. Even black cohosh, there are some black cohosh lookalike species that by the leaves to the, let's say, even mildly trained eye would fool you into thinking it was the same plant. And the root mass material looks similar. One is doll's eyes, Actea rubra, and one is black cohosh, Actea racemosa. One can really cause problems for your liver and the rest of you, and one is a medicine. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these types of things, exist in the plant world, and in the mushroom world. I think, the lion's mane by far is the most popular one now, and it's interesting because in TCM, it's probably not primarily indicated for cognitive function and mental benefit. The same way most of the ginkgo preparations were not really recommended for memory or uh, cognitive decline, although they had that benefit, right? So, and that's both a product of, again, modern research testing these different types of um, extracts and parts of mushrooms and plants to see where we're getting activity. So yeah, it's fascinating, and I've I was just in China for about 10 days at the beginning of July, and I saw 3 different types of mushroom farms, and it was fascinating. And that's the other thing is with mushrooms, I think a lot of people have seen or at least know the concept of garden farming or a farm or a row crop farm, corn, or they've seen soy or corn being grown someplace. But not a lot of people have been to or seen a mushroom farm or know really how mushrooms are grown. They're different kingdom. They have spores. They don't have seeds. They can grow on compost. They can grow on just about anything. They can actually, there's some people who grow on cardboard if you sterilize
Jeez.
it. So, I think it's great to have the experience of someone like Jeff Chilton at Nammex, who has been a commercial mushroom grower and in the business for over 40 years. And to have that kind of experience to tap into is it's wonderful because there's so many questions that I have that he can be very helpful with in a way that sorts out a lot of doing a lot of extra homework to find the answers. So, yeah, but I think we spend a lot of our time answering questions about lion's mane and about the different species. And like you said, people want to know, what is it? What does it do? How do I take it?
Can
And how much
can
does
I
it cost?
can
Can
I
I
take
take it?
it?
Can I take it? Yeah, exactly. And so that's I think something to consider. I think mushrooms have been really showing up in a lot of different types of food products and
Mhm.
coffee beverages and smoothies and different types of food integrations, which I think is a fantastic way for those to be used. Because really, if you look at the health benefits of mushrooms, there have been some pretty dramatic ones in terms of drugs being developed from certain fungi, let's say, or mushrooms or their extracts or pure mycelium extracts in the case of turkey tail, with PSP and PSK being 2 drug products isolated from that starting material. And so I think that, yeah, there are many many avenues to still be explored, but eating them as foods on a daily basis is something that's the way they've been consumed in soups, stir fries. So incorporating them into either a smoothie or something that you're going to have on a daily basis is the way to go. And I'm a little leery of some of the marketing claims about instant benefits
Yeah.
from any mushroom, where lion's mane is a perfect example where, again, it's probably in the category of TCM used more as for digestive kidney function, uh, digestive or kidney yin tonic, because of its energetics as well. And that could enlighten things for you over time, but that's something that's a longer term change. And
Yeah.
even there's 4 or 5 double-blind placebo-controlled studies on PubMed that you can find that actually use the dried mushroom or its equivalent in humans that measured outcomes, and that's it. So we only really have those studies for humans. We have a lot of good in vitro research. We
Mhm.
have a lot of things that indicate nerve growth factor induction, and but I'm not discrediting that at all. But I'm saying that the chances of you acing a quiz because you took 1 dose of lion's mane, if anything could do that, then you have the magic bullet, my friend. So
And the magic wand to go with it. Yeah,
exactly. So
absolutely.
I mean, and again, you and I have been doing this for quite a long time, and that's nothing new. So there will be responsible marketers of supplements and health products, and then there will be the ones that take the claims to the edge. I think um, at the end of the day, the consumers just be glad you have the choice. At least you have the choice
Well,
still.
let
So
me ask you
yeah.
a question, because the public out there, I think they want to stick their toe in the water and test the temperature. I think they kind of want to, but it's a little overwhelming. In your mind, do you think it's the best protocol to maybe try some of these functional mushrooms individually? Or do you think a blended combination would be a better way to go?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. And again, there always want to be a single use applied to a single plant or a single
Hmm.
mushroom, and
Hmm.
a pigeonholing of activity. But I think your advice would be well taken. Something that is speaking to you from either the research or something you've read about it. If you have low energy, you're ultimately going to read about cordyceps and how it can help manage your adrenal function. And so, you start out trying a small amount of that and try it on a daily basis. Uh, I think the greatest hope is for folks formulating with the mushrooms that can also add other types of either nootropics or tropho-restorative type botanicals that can drive at true um, health and wellness that addresses the sort of structure function claim. If you have low energy, as you know, for it could be a number of different reasons,
Hmm.
right? You're not sleeping well. You're not eating the right types of things. You're not resting. Usually, you're not resting and you're not getting the right types of foods. Everybody has stress in their life.
Of
So
course.
that could definitely impact things. But I think if we can feed people these right types of foods and start to rebuild our systems, then we will respond better. We will sleep better. And I can see it myself. Like, I just think the recent trip to China was such a great awakening in how healthy the diet is there. And it's comprised of mainly vegetables, a lot of tofu for protein, a little meat, a little fish, but really predominantly rice-based things, all kinds of different things made from rice, rice noodles, rice soup, porridge. So I think, I ate more than I normally eat, probably twice as much, but I think I lost weight over 10 days of being in China. I was also very active, but I think, when we get back to these two traditional diets and focusing on predominantly eating a lot more vegetables, eating a lot more local vegetables from what you have around you, and hopefully maybe someday being able to grow your own things too a little bit. So,
I know I agree 100%. And back to your mushroom, I grew up in a Polish heritage home, so
okay.
we went mushroom hunting and we did buttons and hen of the woods and all those kind of things. And then when I would visit my friends up in Washington, we would go looking for morels,
Mhm.
and we would find these huge clusters, and they dehydrate them and then they use them throughout the entire year. And literally, where I was from, I'm from Michigan originally, and they would literally have mushroom parties. When people would go get bushels and bushels, they would sit at these tables and clean them and then bag them, and then they would dry. It was crazy. But we had mushrooms all year long, and my grandmother put them in everything. If you stood still, you got mushrooms. But you know what? I love mushrooms today. Quick little story. I was during the pandemic, I was traveling and I was in Arizona, and I stopped at a little vegetarian restaurant, vegetarian, and there was nobody there, obviously, because nobody was out. But I walked in
Mhm.
and I said, "Are you open?" She was like, "Oh my goodness, yes, come in." So I sat down, and she brought me this little bowl of these little white cubes, and she goes, "Enjoy." And I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." And I was eating it, and it tasted like lobster. And I was just like, I said, "What is this?" She goes, "Lion's mane." And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh my goodness." They did it like sauteed it in like a butter and a garlic. I kid you not. It tasted like lobster. So, I mean, I got a taste of it. That was my first time. And since then, I've eaten it quite a few times. But that was my first. And I never, ever would have assumed that that's what that was.
Yeah, and I think that's a great positive change that I've seen is that you can get more than just a white button or a cremini
Hmm.
mushroom or a shiitake in the like oyster mushrooms.
Hmm.
Common now to be able to buy them fresh and cook with them in the grocery store. And lion's mane for sure. There's all kinds of interesting things, seafood, heavy umami type flavor, right? With lion's mane, and also a really interesting texture because of the way it's developed. It's compacted fibers that give it
Hmm.
that ball shape. Crab cakes, shredded shredded lion's mane to make like a shredded seafood crab leg type. It's amazing. Actually, oh, now you've got me going. We have some mushrooms around here called woodier mushrooms,
Oh, okay.
and woodier are well, they're one of the most widely consumed in China, and it's rubbery. It literally looks like an ear growing off of a piece of wood. It's a jelly
Okay.
fungus, and if you've ever seen witch's butter or
Hmm.
any of those other type, tremella is like
Okay.
that, where it's a wavy jelly fungus. Yeah,
Hmm.
so woodier is like that, and literally looks like an ear growing off of a piece of wood. And anyway, I have some logs growing in the back that are inoculated that I'm waiting for mushrooms to come out of. But then
Come out, come
wild
out.
right next to it, there was another set that had woodier all over it after these heavy rains we've had. So um, yeah, I harvested them and cleaned them up a little bit, and then I took them home and I cooked them, and we they taste like noodles. It's really like the texture of a noodle. It's a
Really?
chewy noodle. So if you get a longer one, you can have it, slice it a little bit more thickly, and it really actually does taste a little like a noodle when you
Wow.
fry it in the pan. And so we fooled the kids a little bit and said like that they were noodles in this like salad thing that we made up with them, and they were actually eating woodier mushrooms. But yeah, there's all kinds of different things that I think people will get turned on to with mushrooms, just eating them and cooking. And that's actually, even from working with the supplement company, we sell extracts of mushrooms, but um, any of us that speak, when you really ask, will be quite honest and say you really should just eat them, incorporate them into your diet. And that's the same way with other supplements, is that
True.
those are there to supplement what
Hmm.
we're doing with our health. And, unfortunately, you can't get some of these nutrients in the way you used to. And that's another thing about mushrooms is ergothioneine, a very interesting compound in mushrooms that uh, I think could be classified it ticks a lot of the boxes as an essential nutrient,
Hmm.
right? Like it can't be manufactured by the body or other cofactors of nutrients that you're taking in. Has a transport mechanism across the cell, to which meaning it is being stored for future use someplace, right? So those two things could make it essential. And really, it comes from mushrooms and fungal activity with ectomycorrhizal fungi that attach to the roots of plants. And then the plants, certain legumes, will take up ergothioneine into the bean. And so you will find a few different types of plants, but really it's limited to some actinobacteria and then the mushrooms. And so humans really like looking for the human connection. Humans discovered probably by trial and error that mushrooms were a food and that they did have things other than just fiber in them, that they were filling and that they had some protein and nutrients. And then along the way, probably also discovered the psychedelic ones, right, which had other
Yeah.
effects, which they discovered. And so, in this way, we've evolved with the
Hmm.
mushrooms the same way we've evolved with the plants. And so, it's a coevolution. But we never really ate that many different species because humans stuck to the ones that they knew wouldn't kill them. We became smart in that way. So I think it's the same type of educational curve, and ours is just, yeah, learn about these, maybe include certain ones a little bit more than others, And once we have further evidence on concentrated preparations, there may be some different uses for them down the road. So
I find myself eating them as much as I can, but also the more research I do, every year I sit at my kitchen table with all my supplements, and I'm bound and determined to cut a whole bunch of them out and downsize. But I usually end up adding like 5 or 6 more. But it's the same thing with mushrooms. The more studying I do, the more I keep adding, and I love them. And the more you get to know them intimately, and you start really reading and studying what you can. You think to yourself, yeah, I want that. I want that
yeah,
too.
I think the same way. I usually come back to reishi mushroom.
Me too.
Like uh, seems like that one. Maybe it's because I've been working with that one for so long. Who knows? But and now I think actually cordyceps. And cordyceps actually has been around and known about a little bit longer than some of the other species. So if I even think back to my days of extracting certain mushrooms, it was reishi mushroom really
Hmm.
predominantly to make a liquid extract from that most people were using. So yeah, could talk about these all day long. If you have other topics you'd like to cover, you better do that now because I'll show you something cool. I don't know if this is a podcast, so it will be audio mostly, right? Or is
No,
there a
this one they're
video?
watching us right now.
Oh, they're
So,
watching us now. So I'll just show you a container of cordyceps.
oh, there we go.
Beautiful. Those are some cordyceps mushrooms that were freeze dried. And in China, those are eaten really like in soups. Like you would get some strands of cordyceps mushroom in a soup and has a really nice flavor, very sweet. There is quite a bit of mannitol in mushrooms in general, and in this one as well. And there's another interesting component of cordyceps called trehalose, and that's in quite a few of the fleshier mushrooms. And the trehalose is something where it's quite interesting, and I think in mushrooms, it's in their structure, it acts like an antifreeze. Let's say, like it
Oh,
keeps cells from dying from cold because of its structure. So we have to realize that like the kind of constituents that are in the mushroom or in the plant are there to serve the plant or the mushroom in terms of its cycle, protecting it the same way. And so when we look at trehalose as a food source, it's a slow carb. So it's the type of a uh, very abundant additive that has been used in the food supply that is safe to be eaten and helps with that type of slowing of digestive process in a hyperactive digestion where it takes a little bit long. It's a slow burning carb basically. So they've looked at replacing sugar with trehalose in some populations. In Japan, it's a food ingredient. It's a food ingredient here, trehalose. So yeah, it's interesting. We discover more and more about mushrooms every day, but I think that type of just eating them dry or cooking with them, this is always going to be my fave.
well, the interesting thing, and to your point, when you showed the cordyceps, I think that could have been part of the fear and frustration because most people know what a button mushroom looks like, and all of a sudden they're hearing about chaga and turkey tail and reishi, and all these other things that don't look like they're little button mushrooms. So instantly, it's
Yeah,
like I don't know about those. I don't know what to do, and so the learning curve is there, but I mean, it's there to learn.
yeah, absolutely. And they're out in the forest. If you have access to forest area, many of these species or their lookalikes will be out there, especially now in the fall with some getting into the fall with some rain. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm going to spend more of my time in my bio says that I like to fly fish, which is absolutely true. But I find myself now spending more time kind of like hunting around for mushrooms and stuff than leave the fish alone a little bit and do that. But no, yeah, it's been great chatting about this with
Absolutely.
you, and I think that yeah, I look forward to creating interesting ways to educate people about mushrooms and more like get them to be curious themselves and point them in the right direction for resources to read more about and learn. And there's plenty of groups. There's mycological associations. There's mushroom foraging groups that pop up locally, and I think that's another great way to learn from your community. And so the more that happens, and there's less fear about mushrooms, then maybe there will be a more widespread use of things more than just lion's mane and reishi
I think
and
I agree.
cordyceps. Yeah.
I want to thank you for being here today. Before I let you go, my tradition is to have all my guests leave a thought for the day. It could be on anything you want. What thought would you like to leave my audience with?
Wow, I'm on the spot with the thought. Um, well, it may sound like overdone, but I would say it's important in life to follow your bliss. And if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, that was one of his many philosophies of how to navigate life. And I think if we key into what really drives us to be happy in our lives and our community, and not necessarily work all the time, but follow your bliss, find out what that passion is, and hold on to it, and that can give you a lot of hope in times where there's a lot of chaos around you. So
I love that. Bill, thank you for being here today. Can I get you to come back again in the future?
yeah, absolutely, love to do it.
I'd love it. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Remember, tell your friends, go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com, click on the Honest Health logo for the Spotify audio version, and also click on the YouTube logo, and you can actually watch our great looking faces here on the screen and listen to the conversation and watch it along the way. Either way, bring your friends along. It's all about getting healthy, being healthy, and staying healthy. So I hope you'll take the time to tune in frequently and, open your mind, open your heart. You'd be surprised how much you can learn and make your life that much better. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks a lot.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.